Okay. I finished doing the show for today. I was editing it down, and all of a sudden my dad called. And then I started getting text messages. And it happened the last, I'd say, hour or so. It was so shocking. And yes, it always does come, and it's the weirdest thing. It always comes in threes with celebrity deaths. I just went 45 minutes this morning with Tim Walters of the Florida Today, breaking down the very sad death of Ozzy Osbourne at 76 years old. And then we got the news with TMZ. Yes, the immortal Hulk Hogan, very controversial figure in pop culture now, passed away, cardiac arrest, 71 years old. And I thought, if I'm coming back on the air to talk about this, there's only one man who could bring it up with me, the biggest wrestling fan I know in the universe. And I've known this guy for over 10 years. He loves wrestling so much, he even subscribes to Japanese wrestling in his free time. He is a great man with the Augusta Free Press there in the Commonwealth of Virginia. He's my great friend, Chris Graham, with Reaction. Chris, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mark. And yeah, this news, caught us all by surprise, but also maybe not. There had been rumors in the last few weeks that Hulk Hogan's health had been deteriorating. His friends and confidants had been strenuously denying it. So, maybe there was surprise, but also maybe not in the context of what we've been hearing lately about Hulk Hogan's health.
I'll just say this. Yep. I'll give him credit. Bubba the Love Sponge, of all people. I know they had a very complicated, history with those two. We can get into that. He was reporting on his show the last couple of weeks that Hogan is not doing well. And then my coworker Eric was saying that, like, Jimmy Hart was saying, oh, no, Hogan's fine. Don't worry about it. No, I give credit, Bubba the Love Sponge, and I have been on his show. He's a very interesting man. I'll put it that way. He was the one all over it, and 71 years old, man. And I think of the last times we saw him in the public eye, you probably think those Republican National Convention where he was rallying for President Trump. That was the one in Milwaukee last summer. I think that Monday Night Raw, I think it was an anniversary show. He came out to promote that beer and got booed out of the building.
Yeah.
I think, are those the last two, or am I wrong here?
I think you're right. I mean, when I wrote a story about this and posted it just a few minutes ago in Augusta Free Press, the story the picture I got off of Shutterstock was from the National Convention last year. So,
yeah.
And the thing is, he was 70 years old then. The picture has him, after he took his, he ripped his shirt off like he always did back in the 80s when he was the babyface champ. He still had guns. I mean, he still had these big rippling muscles in his arms there for a 70-year-old guy. It was impressive. But yeah, I think it was that, and then the appearance on Raw where he got booed out of the building. I mean, yeah, his legacy's complicated, and wrestling fans who grew up with him as the babyface champ of the 80s, as they grew up and learned more about his, all the things, the steroids, you mentioned the Bubba the Love Sponge. There was a scandal there. There was the racism scandal. I mean, so the guy that we grew up, rooting for as kids, it was complicated. Let's just say that.
It was. And you look at different interviews from other wrestlers, most of them do not say nice things about him. They do not. But I will say this. I think right now people are in shock. They go to nostalgia and they just think of what you just said. The 80s, growing up, just like you and me. We grew up as kids. He was the original superstar. He is Mount Rushmore. He might be the greatest of all time as a wrestler. And you think of the 90s with WCW and creating the NWO. I think him and Ric Flair are the two greatest of all time in my eyes. And I think a lot of people are going to think about that. But you're right. I do think the thing with Bubba the Love Sponge and the racist tape and all these other complicated things with him, but I just think nostalgia. I think people are just going to think of the good times with him. How about you?
Yeah, he was the guy that Vince McMahon built.
Yeah.
Vince McMahon's WWF around. Vince McMahon Jr. Inherited the company from his father, Vince McMahon Sr. It was a regional promotion operating in the Northeast, basically D.C., really more New York, Philadelphia, and the Boston area for, at that point, plus 20 plus years. Vince McMahon, the younger, junior, had this vision of, I'm going to take it national, and I need somebody to carry the ball for me. And he picked Hulk Hogan to be that guy. And he brought Hulk Hogan in. Hulk Hogan had just come off a starring turn, so to speak. He played a really interesting character in the movie Rocky III, Thunder Lips.
Yes.
And he was well known for that. Vince McMahon kind of steals Hulk Hogan away from Vern Gagne and the AWA. They didn't know what they had out there in the Midwest. Hired him in December of '83. A month later, he has Hulk Hogan defeat the Iron Sheik to become the WWF World Champion. Keeps the belt on him for 4 years. They build up so much. They're doing live matches on MTV. WrestleMania results from the popularity that ensued. And it's sort of the rest is history. There is no WWE that we know of now if there's not a Hulk Hogan.
I made this comment the other day when I saw Mick Jagger perform in concert last summer with the Rolling Stones. And I told this to my dad where I was like, everything starts with Mick Jagger. Like, you're going to be a lead singer in a rock and roll band and you're going to live that lifestyle. It starts with Mick Jagger. When I think of Hulk Hogan, what you just brought up is absurd. He's the first national superstar, and every little kid knows who he is. It's so shocking when you think about, because, you have The Rock and you have Stone Cold. You have the shirt on right now, Austin 316, and little kids could say John Cena. This was the original guy, like the original. And you bring up MTV, the crossover appeal of this guy, of where, he's with Cyndi Lauper and then he's with Sylvester Stallone. And I made the joke right before we came on. When I was a kid, I would watch Suburban Commando over and over and over again with Christopher Lloyd. It was a stupid movie, but I loved it. No Holds Barred. And there was one, he was a nanny. And I post this on Twitter. Anytime I'm sad or a little depressed, a little down on the world, I've told you this before, I love the Baywatch episode where him and Macho Man, they fight Vader and Ric Flair for the community center. It's so bad, but it just makes me laugh, Chris. I'm sorry I have to tell you that. I love it.
What's interesting though is Hulk Hogan, unlike, you mentioned other guys, you mentioned The Rock, you mentioned John Cena. Those guys didn't have to wrestle into their 60s because they became the actual Hollywood stars to the level they've become. I mean, The Rock for a while was the biggest movie star in the world. John Cena is not that, but he's definitely very successful. Hulk Hogan attempted a few different times to make that transition, never quite made it. You talk about the bad movies, the bad TV shows, and as a result, he stayed in wrestling a lot longer than he probably wanted to. He wrestled in, maybe the NWO doesn't happen if he becomes a successful movie star, and of course the NWO, the greatest heel turn of all time.
The number one moment, I will say this. I think it's the number one moment in professional wrestling. I think the most important, and look, when he body slams Andre the Giant, I get it. That's up there as well, WrestleMania 3. I think him turning heel changed professional wrestling forever. I think he is right there in the center of the most important and greatest moment in wrestling history.
Well, and you could say both. I mean, both his Hulkamania years, those 10 or 12 years, the NWO years. I mean, the Monday Night Wars of the late 90s are the result of that. Yeah. He comes back in the 2000s, has a great WrestleMania match with Rock in the Sky Dome that was then the Sky Dome. The crowd basically made them change from, Hulk Hogan comes in as the heel and The Rock as the babyface, and they have to change roles because the crowd, 60,000 people, are cheering Hulk Hogan in 2002. He had that unfortunate run at the end with TNA. I say unfortunate, it just didn't work out. It didn't work out for him or for TNA from 2009 to 2013. But, he was around that long. And for a guy who, he wasn't a great in-ring wrestler. He was a great talker. He looked the part. And he could do enough. And he had some matches in Japan where he showed off more than he showed off in the United States in terms of his in-ring ability. But by and large, he got over as being a literal larger-than-life character, 6'8", 300 pounds, who could, body slam Andre the Giant and, got people to either love him or hate him, depending on what he wanted to do.
He also, the interview, him and Ric Flair, again, I will say this, those are the two greatest of all time. Him and Mean Gene, where he does the interview, and we all impersonate that. We've all done it, and we both worked with professional wrestling. That's why I'll go over Chris here in a second. But like, let me tell you something, brother. And Mean Gene and I, you know, what's funny, when I was a kid, I knew I was going to be broadcasting, because I would try to be like Mean Gene, where you get the mic and all right, what's going on? You're going to take on Andre the Giant. What do you think? And Hogan would come on, and that's where it really hits me. Like, it really hits me when you think of that aspect as well. What Hogan, he created those as well in front of our eyes.
Oh yeah, I mean, Gene Urkel. Let me tell you, Mean Gene. You know, the brother. All those little catchphrases type things. The energy he brought to his promos. You know, I mean, that's what for time immemorial in wrestling, you had to get yourself over with your ability to talk. I mean, but in the territory days, you know, guys got over that way. But you know, he and Ric Flair both hit at the right time. We'll bring Ric Flair into the discussion here too, like you did. In the 80s, as Vince McMahon is building his father's WWF regional promotion into a national promotion, the Mid-Atlantic wrestling territory and the Georgia territories down south had access to TBS, and so they're trying to become a national promotion. Cable TV helps this out. I mean, you know, these guys were on our TVs. Most of us only had a few cable channels, but all cable channels had WWF and WCW wrestling. And so, you know, I remember I was one of those kids that I would save my lunch money. I would skip lunch to buy wrestling magazines. And the wrestling magazines always had the dream match, Ric Flair versus Hulk Hogan. We always wanted to see the big dream match, and we eventually got it. It wasn't as good as it could have been, but you know, that's what it was. Those guys could both talk you into the arena. Ric Flair could get you to hate him. You wanted to see his head on a platter, but you wanted to see Hulk Hogan beat those big beasts, Andre the Giant, King Kong Bundy, Hercules Hernandez, you know, Big John Studd, all those big, large, even bigger than him guys that he would pick up, body slam, and drop the leg on. That's what wrestling was in the 80s.
It's hitting you, isn't it? It's, yeah, when you start talking about it, like, you can't believe it's so famous in this, not just wrestling. Everyone knows the name Hulk Hogan, even though that's not his real name. And the other one is, I swear, I saw a video the other day where someone was criticizing Hulk Hogan because his whole gimmick is stolen from Billy Graham, right? The whole thing. Let me tell you something, brother. And he's doing the biceps and like the whole gimmick. But you got to give credit to Vince McMahon. And Vince McMahon's another person here who I think is one of the most, you know, important and influential persons in professional wrestling. And with his now complicated history, it's kind of like he got canceled. It's so weird, this whole situation we're in right now. Because I was going to say, if you would have said this in 2005, oh yeah, by the way, people would hate Hogan at the end, and they canceled Vince McMahon. You're like, what are you talking about? I don't get it.
Yeah. I mean, both those guys are intertwined. Vince McMahon wanted Vince McMahon Jr., the one we know as Vince McMahon. His father put the WWF at the time belt on superstar Billy Graham. The WWF regional promotion was built around babyface champions. Bruno Sammartino was his champion 2 different times for a total of 11 years. He wanted ethnic champions to kind of appeal to his ethnic base in the Northeast. Yeah. So he puts the belt briefly on superstar Billy Graham because he wants to transition to another babyface champion. And Billy Graham's too good at what he does. So he keeps the belt on Billy Graham for 14 months instead of for a couple of weeks like he had done before with his interstitial champions, because this guy was so good at talking. He was so good, and he looked the part. But Vince McMahon Sr. eventually says, "No, I got to go back to the way I do business." Vince Jr. says, "Man, if I was running this show, I would have the belt on that guy." So a few years later, you know, he finds a guy. So superstar Billy Graham himself had already transitioned into to different characters. This is maybe 7 years later. He's already transitioned into being different guys. Hulk Hogan has been out in the Midwest perfecting Hulkamania. which is based on superstar Billy Graham. So, I mean, Ric Flair is Nature Boy Buddy Rogers from the 60s, the first WWF champion, actually. So, everything kind of, and all those guys owe a lot to Muhammad Ali. So, I mean, everything is borrowed. I wouldn't say anybody stole anything, but Hulk Hogan perfected and did even, and certainly, I mean, to give Billy Graham credit for coming up with that persona, but Hulk Hogan perfected it.
That very well said. And I think of my childhood. So I was born in 1982. And the problem is I'm not a kid anymore. Okay, I'm 43. I'm a millennial. So essentially when I was a kid, it was Hulk Hogan was the good guy. Everyone knew this. Hogan was the good guy. And as a video game super nerd, every wrestling game I had growing up had Hulk Hogan on it. On Nintendo, Genesis, it didn't. Hulk Hogan was featured. Even if it was like, all right, we're also going to show The Undertaker and Macho Man. And no, Hulk Hogan was on there. He was. The weirdest Hulk Hogan thing I always talk about, there's that one WrestleMania that's just bizarre where Bret Hart is going to take on Yokozuna for the belt. And something happens. You could tell something crazy. And this is one of the negative things about Hulk Hogan, where he never put anyone over. And he had final say on all booking, everything. So I think Mr. Fuji, was that his name? Who was the manager of Yokozuna? So he does the, like, he spits something in Bret Hart's eyes. Bret Hart can't compete. So Hogan's music hits. He body slams Yokozuna and he wins the title. Most bizarre ending to a WrestleMania ever. And I don't think Bret Hart was part of that.
Well, and then there in his WCW era, the creative control issue came up as well. There was the whole thing with a Vince Russo. Who was also involved in this? Jeff Jarrett, yeah, Booker T. Vince Russo wanted to put the belt, I believe, on Booker T. Hulk Hogan didn't want to do that, so there's this whole. He leaves the show as the champion. He's flying in the plane, and Vince Russo has another match and puts another belt on. I mean, just the creative control thing. Definitely, he didn't want to put guys over. He didn't want to. He had it in his contract where he could do what he wanted to do. Now, to that credit, he should get credit for one thing. Bill Goldberg just retired here a couple of weeks ago, right?
I just watched that clip the other day where Goldberg beats him and Karl Malone's there. Yeah. I swear I just watched that, buddy.
I remember watching that live. I guess it was 1998, and Goldberg was hot. I mean, they had an angle going where he had this long undefeated streak. The match kind of came up impromptu. They sold out the Georgia Dome for a Monday Nitro, so not even a pay-per-view. And Hogan puts him over. And, it's one of those things where a guy who's not known for putting other guys over puts a guy over on a big stage on live TV. And by that point, I'm long, into knowing that the business is a work.
Yeah,
I'm shocked. Oh my God, Hulk Hogan just put Goldberg over. What is going on here? So, if you protect that creative control, it can actually lead to things like that surprise moment for Bill Goldberg. And Bill Goldberg isn't Bill Goldberg 20 some years later, if not for Hulk Hogan.
That's a great point. We're here with Chris Graham talking about the passing of Hulk Hogan. Very sad today at the age of 71. And I will say this again, very complicated history. I'm not just going to be on here crying, saying how great he was. Okay. And I loved Hulk Hogan growing up, but there's so many insane stories with him. The other one is they decided to put over Ultimate Warrior and beat Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania. And I'll tell you, from a marketing standpoint, they went all in on Ultimate Warrior, and Hogan let that happen, but it wasn't the same. All these thoughts go in my head and just random stories. Here's one. Hogan always said that the George Foreman grill was supposed to be his endorsement, but he didn't take the phone call. Was that it? Or something stupid, which I don't believe. Remember, because the George Foreman grill came out of like 25 years ago. That is a great product. And George Foreman passed away as well recently. Hogan says it was supposed to be the Hulk Hogan grill, which I don't.
Hogan's got lots of stories. That's the thing about Hulk Hogan. There's a whole there's a whole Wikipedia page of his stories. He famously once claimed to work 366 days in a year because he worked a date in Japan and went back and forth across the international date line. So, I mean, the guy told stories. That's an unfortunate part of his legacy is that, he embellished so much. And, it's one thing, I'm sure wrestlers from 100 years ago told stories. It's just that there weren't tape recorders and there wasn't YouTube and TikTok to record it all, right? So they would tell their stories in the locker room and nobody knew how much they were lying. Now we hear all these things and we have to do the math, and it just doesn't add up there, Hulk.
Okay, I'll tell you a story you don't know. So a good friend of mine, Charles Knight, he's with Rockstar Entertainment here in town. Him and his wife do a great job. He messaged me personally saying he was working at a nightclub, I believe in Cocoa Beach in 1978. And a bouncer there was Terry, who became Hulk Hogan. So he met him then before Hulkamania ran wild. So I bet you there's a lot of people. Again, my coworker Eric says, what is it? Him and his brother were over there in the Tampa St. Pete area where they were going into some pharmacy and Hogan and Mach walk in to pick up their prescriptions. Like, you can't. If you saw, even today, if you would have saw Macho Man and Hulk Hogan walking down the street, I don't know if my brain could compute that could happen. Here's my question. So did you see Hulk Hogan wrestle in person?
Did not. No, I'd never gone to a WWF or WWE live event until I want to say in the early 2000s. And by that point, he had already cycled out of WWE. I guess he had changed their name to WWE by that point.
Yeah.
So no, I'm trying to think. I did see a live TNA show, but and there were stars on that show like Mick Foley and Kevin Nash and Scott Steiner, but I don't think Hulk Hogan was on that show. So no, I don't think I'm pretty sure I never saw him live.
I went to a TNA show at the John Paul Jones Arena in Charlottesville.
I went to probably that same show actually.
Maybe this was like 2009.
It seems like yeah.
Maybe. You know what's funny about that? I think that's before you and me met.
I think
we were going to be blood brothers anyway. And I was there. Hogan did not appear, but I bought a Hogan shirt at that event.
Okay.
I remember that. I remember Booker T came out making fun of the crowd, saying they all have terrible teeth here in Virginia. I remember him saying that. Yeah, and I think the headliner was AJ Styles versus Samoa Joe.
That sounds right. What I remember about that was I had been to WWE events there at the John Paul Jones Arena in Charlottesville, the basketball arena for the University of Virginia. And, they had, of course, used the whole arena. TNA show, they had to cut off like 2/3 of the arena because there was not a lot of ticket sales for that show.
I took a woman to that event. I remember this, and I will tell you why. We were hanging out. We went to the wrestling event. Not a smart move, by the way, because, I'm still single. We're in my car driving home, and this is hand on the Bible. If we're in court, I will say this is a true story. Go to the event. We then go get some drinks. She looks at the clock in my car, and she goes, "What time is it?" I go, "I don't know, like 12:30 in the morning." She goes, "Drive me to Applebee's." I'm like, "What? Why?" And it was the Applebee's on 29, like by my work, right? She goes, "Take me to Applebee's. Someone owes me money, and I got to go get it." What? What are you talking about? I swear to God, that's a true story.
It sounds like, so at first I'm thinking when you say you took her to a wrestling event, and I'm thinking, well, she's like, oh, I'm not impressed by the wrestling. Sounds like wrestling was probably tame for her.
Dude, one time at that Applebee's, and this was like a year later, and I was like, maybe that woman was right. There's a Food Lion right there. There's a Food Lion. It's right by where I lived, by the mall, 29 in Rio. So there's a Food Lion, then the Applebee's is right by it. So I'm leaving Food Lion one night with my groceries. All of a sudden, the front door to the Applebee's opens up, and you see a guy get punched out. And he tells him, "I never want to see your face here ever again." And I was thinking, maybe this was where the real fighting takes place.
It puts different perspective on the old phrase, beat him like they owed him money or something like that. I mean,
That's so. I'm so happy. That's from the vault. I haven't thought of that story in a long time. I haven't. But if we're talking about the legacy of Hulk Hogan, okay, I'm gonna upgrade. I'm gonna do this live on the air with you. Okay. There are times I thought Montreal Screwjobs at number one, but in honor of Hulk Hogan today, him turning heel and joining Nash and Hall is now number one. The most important moment, because you never saw that before. You didn't, because he's always, there's the good guy, and then this was the bad guy. And then him turning heel, as they say in the business, the anti-hero, changed everything forever. We've never gone back from that moment.
Right.
We haven't. So I'm taking it number one.
I mean, what I'll say is think back to that moment. I went back maybe a year or two ago and rewatched just that part of the match. Because the match, the way it was set up, it was a 6-man match, but the Hall
we didn't know the third. We didn't know the third man.
We didn't know the third man. Hall and Nash were in there together, and then Hogan starts walking down the ring. And remember, Bobby Heenan was on commentary. Bobby Heenan, longtime sworn enemy of Hulk Hogan from their WWF days. It was always Heenan's army. Heenan was always bringing in somebody to fight Hulk Hogan. And so Heenan's first words are to the effect of, he's here to turn heel. Because Heenan, they didn't let the announcers in on what was going to happen because they wanted their reactions to be authentic. And so Heenan naturally, he gives away the story without giving away the story because that's Bobby Heenan. And so, of course, what that did to us as viewers, I was watching that show live in 1996. As viewers, we're like, okay, well, that means he's coming down to help out the good guys. That's what he's supposed to do. He's Hulk Hogan. He's wearing the red and yellow.
Yes.
And then remember, I mean, the crowd starts throwing all the trash at the ring. And for months afterwards, every time Hulk Hogan appeared in a ring, it was a thing to throw drinks and popcorn and hot dog wrap and everything at Hulk Hogan because he turned heel. He did. We were all in on wrestling by that point, or most of us were in on wrestling at that point, but we still hated Hulk Hogan for turning heel that much.
And the promo he cut after he does the leg drop on Macho Man Randy Savage, and then Mean Gene's in the ring. Man, can you imagine? Like, you think the history of professional wrestling, all those guys are Hall of Famers, all of them. Yeah. And he had to cut that promo, and he's talking about Billionaire Ted and that company up north, and like he's bigger than it's an all-timer. It is.
That whole 2-month period where Hall and Nash appear, Eric Bischoff sold it as they're invading the company. It concludes with Hulk Hogan. And then, remember, so he goes from the cheery, red and yellow with the headband and the blonde hair. He grows like the beard that he dyes jet black, but leaves the little goatee that's gold. Yeah.
He's Hollywood.
He's wearing the black colors. Eventually they form NWO Hollywood. I mean, Karl Malone is involved. Jay Leno's involved. Dennis Rodman's involved. It was a second era of rock and wrestling. I mean, the first era was Cyndi Lauper and Liberace and Sylvester Stallone. That second era comes up, and they do some great things. He was part of two of the biggest long-term storylines ever in pro wrestling.
I like the idea that, and I've said this for years. Okay, so he's the main attraction. He's the good guy. But then somehow with his ego, he's like, all right, I'll turn into the biggest bad guy. But at the same time, he's still the star attraction and the main character. That's incredible. No other wrestler could have pulled that off. No way.
And we look back on it now because it worked. We know from history but it was a very risky thing to have done. So risky that think now the current WWE champion is John Cena. Yeah. For many years, people suggested, hey, at some point, John Cena needs to make a heel turn. John Cena resisted for a similar amount of time, pretty much, that Hulk Hogan resisted the heel turn because it is risky. If you're a long-term babyface, if you're a star, you want to be in movies, and then all of a sudden you're not telling kids to take their vitamins and say their prayers. You're out there, doing all these dastardly things in front of live TV audiences. Just in his era, he was the Make-A-Wish guy of the 80s and 90s, just like John Cena was in the 2000s and 2010s. So we look back on it now and say, Hulk Hogan, yeah, that was a great move. But in 1996, It was extremely risky to say the least, and it worked out great.
It did. I think of The Last Dance with the Bulls, where there's that moment during the NBA Finals where Phil Jackson asked the team, "Where's Dennis?" Where's he? Oh, he's on Nitro with Hulk Hogan. And then you can go on YouTube and watch the clip. It's so funny. Dude, and it got out of hand. So, it's like it's one of the great gimmicks of all time and great factions, NWO. But, like, it ran its course very quickly because they had, like, 500 people in the NWO. So when you watch that, they're at the United Center in Chicago. They bring the limo. Hogan comes out first with Dennis Rodman. Then 50 other guys show up. It's so we have this running joke at work. Who wasn't in the NWO?
Oh, at some point, yeah.
Even the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes was in it for a second.
Yeah.
Who wasn't it? Ric Flair was not in it.
Sting didn't join. He was the other guy.
It was the fake Sting.
It was the NWO Sting. Yes.
It got so big, they had to become the Wolfpack, the Red NWO, and they were fighting each other.
Yeah, it's kind of. I'm thinking the Bloodline is playing out in the same way now. Now everybody's in the Bloodline, right? So it's kind of like late stage capitalism, as they talk about in sociology, right? We're in late stage wrestling booking. Okay, we gotta stretch this out as far as we can, but no, the NWO thing, yeah, it's at some point they had their own pay-per-view. I mean, it got a bit ridiculous. But for the first 3 years of it, oh my God, they beat WWE, they beat Raw in the ratings 83 straight weeks. They were on the Tonight Show. They had Rodman and Malone, who were in the finals against each other, wrestling each other. It was a pop culture phenomenon. Hulk Hogan was at the center of the two biggest pop culture phenomenons that we've ever known in wrestling. They're 12 years apart.
I have told this to people. I will say it to you, and I appreciate coming on at short notice. It's kind of a crazy thing where we went from Ozzy Osbourne, who I loved as well. I was in high school from 1996 to 2000. So I got into wrestling. Like I did when I was a little kid, 80s, I'd watch it. Then I kind of lost track. And then when I got into high school, I feel so fortunate. The Monday Night Wars were when I was in high school. It was must-see TV, and I fell in love with all these guys. And I'll admit it, I was a WWF guy because I fell in love with the corporate champ, The Rock, and Stone Cold and Triple H. I think those are my favorite now of all time. But I would watch WCW as well. And dude, I remember I was in college when the final episode and Shane McMahon shows up. Like, I bought it, and like all that stuff. All of it. I cherish it forever. And you bring up, okay, Ozzy had the first kind of celebrity reality show with the Osbournes, which was a big deal. Then you had Hogan Knows Best. Yeah. I think that was the second one where Hogan was on there.
I would say you're right. I mean, if whether or not someone could point out there was something in between, what we remember is Osbournes and then Hogan. Yeah. I mean, Hogan, that was his third act, maybe we could say, right?
Yeah.
And, just like everything else, unfortunately, the extra exposure. And in the Osbournes case, I don't think there was anything negative. I mean, nothing negative came out of it. Unfortunately, in Hogan's case, yeah, I mean, he ends up divorcing his wife. His son has the fatal car accident. I think he had some he was estranged from his daughter, unfortunately. I'm not sure if they ever repaired that relationship. But, I mean, yeah, for a few years there, yeah, he was a forerunner. He was a Kardashian before there were Kardashians, you could say, perhaps.
Yeah, and the thing with Bubba the Love Sponge is we're wrapping this up. Remember the sex tape?
Yeah.
And he sued Gawker and won, by the way, over $100 million. But then, see, this was so crazy about the story. It wasn't having, I can't believe I'm saying this. I know it's a family show. So he's on camera having sex with Bubba's wife. But that's not what got him in trouble. It was the things he was saying on the tape afterwards, the racist comments that got him even in more trouble. That's what was so shocking and weird about it. Just weird. And then his relationship with the WWE by the end. And, you forget when he's in court over the steroid allegations, which you talked about at the top. So you have all these things that were going on. And
The Richard Belzer case, remember, where he puts the comedian in the head of the guillotine and drops him on his head. I mean, so there, and that was early. That was him and Mr. T promoting WrestleMania 1.
Yeah, that is wild, dude. And then I don't know. It's funny you bring up like he tried to become a movie star and it didn't really work. It didn't. You know what he was in, which was funny? Okay, now that we're all getting it out there, in Gremlins 2. Okay, this is a great part. Remember, it goes fourth wall where the movie stops and you're a kid and you're like, what did my VCR break? What is this? And it was fourth wall where the Gremlins took over the projector room and they screwed it with. So then Hulk Hogan shows up on screen and starts yelling at the Gremlins. You know what I'm talking about.
I do know what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah. And at that point, I didn't know the concept of fourth wall, so that was educational in and of itself. But no, yeah, but again, like the guys who came after him, does Dwayne Johnson become Dwayne Johnson if not for Hulk Hogan trying to become the movie star that he didn't become, but he did make some inroads that then the guys like Dwayne Johnson and John Cena could build off of. I mean, I think it's inarguable that if Hulk Hogan doesn't do what he does in the 80s, tries to do what he does in the 80s, those guys don't try to do what they do in the 90s and thereafter.
All right, let's end with this. Okay, so on Baywatch, here's what happens. I always love telling this story. So, because it's every 90s and 2000s plot. There's a community center that the kids go to, beachfront property. Then it appears, I'm going to try to do this without laughing. So it appears someone has bought the property and wants to tear down the community center to build beachfront condos. And Hogan and Macho Man hear this and go, who would do such a thing? And a limo pulls up. And it's the nature boy. Ric Flair gets out. So it's Vader. Vader shows up. And I like that Vader, he's in his ring attire with the mask on the beach. And it's the Shockmaster. He's the other guy. I can't think of the guy's name.
Oh, yeah.
He's not the Shockmaster. He's just like, regular guy. So, but he has paint on. So they're like, I can't believe it's Ric Flair. So Hogan, it's so funny to watch now. So Hogan goes, how could you do this, Ric Flair? But Ric Flair's in the right. Forget the community center. I'm on $1 million properties here, beachfront property. I can make money. And he's like, no, here's what we're going to do. You're going to put the belt on the line for the deed to the community center. So what I love with this idea is everything in the universe doesn't matter. The championship belt trumps it all. That's what I love about pro wrestling. And I feel like wrestling now needs to get back to that, where they don't care who's the champ. No, being the champ is the most important thing over money, fame, success. If you're the champ, that's the greatest accomplishment in life. And that's what and when Hogan was, everyone knew he was the champ for WWF.
If you're the champ, you get to save the community center. I mean, that's what it is, right?
But what's interesting is it should have been Flair versus Hogan, but no, for some reason in the episode, I never understand this. It's Vader versus Hogan, Macho Man versus Ric Flair. And then what they do is they just show clips from, I think, a bass at the beach in the background.
Oh, that explains why they had to do it that way. Yeah.
And when I was a kid, this always make me laugh, is the idea of like, I didn't understand, like, so you'd watch the television program. They would never actually fight for the belt on the program. They'd always like, I'll see you in 3 weeks at insert pay-per-view. So I'll see you at Mania in 5 weeks from now. Why don't we just fight right now? No, we got to make that money.
We got to make that money. I mean, Baywatch was watched at its height. I just learned this the other day. I was doing some research. 1 billion people watched Baywatch at its height because of syndication worldwide. So more people saw those guys wrestle on Baywatch than ever saw them wrestle on WWE or WCW.
When you meet people, here's what's funny. When you meet people in Europe or all around the world who've never been to America before, their brains are like, oh, you ask them, what is the United States of America? They think of New York City Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles. And they think you could fly here and then just get in a car and drive to Miami, like from New York. That's what they think it's like. So when they saw that's why Baywatch was so famous, because they're like, oh, yeah, all women look like Pamela Anderson. Oh, yeah, that's the men look like David Hasselhoff.
All dudes run around on the beach with abs, right? 6-pack abs. No, most of us run around with 12-pack abs, unfortunately.
Okay, all right. Here's the other thing I love. What Hulk Hogan and wrestling taught me is, and look, Chris Graham, again, follow him on all social media. Go to his website for news, politics, sports, and wrestling talk with the Augusta Free Press. I love the idea. You go to a show, and it's like, hey, Chris, go get your best man. I'm going to get my best man, and we're going to have a tag team championship tonight here in Kansas City, Missouri. And the announcers are like, can we even do that? Is that even allowed? Yes. Yeah, they're booking their own show. They act like it's a big deal.
Getting word from the back. That show is now official. It'll be the main event.
You mean to tell me that Hulk Hogan is teaming up with Macho Man Randy Savage to make the Mega Powers? And they're going to take it. It's so great. I love wrestling. I really do. So I'm sad today by this whole thing.
Sad by the whole thing, no doubt. It's definitely a reminder of our childhood and also a reminder to people like us, Mark, that we are getting older, that our childhood icons are aging out like that.
Yeah. Have you heard a word I said, or are you still thinking about the woman who said, take me to Applebee's? You owe me, that person owes me money. So, I'm
wondering, if I've written about her in the last 15 years, and I wonder where she is now. Yeah.
Another one of the X's. Chris Graham, Augusta Free Press. Thank you so much for talking about the passing of Hulk Hogan. Have a great day. All right.
Thank you, sir.